everybody.
Hi.
Hey, Michael.
Good morning or evening.
Good evening. Good evening. Hey, all. Hey, so it's Friday the 5th, and we're about 3 after, so let's rock the Friday. It might be possible we end up off early today. We'll see. We'll see. So, Michael's with us. Payush is with us. Payush, I don't. Singaria.
Hi.
Hey, Payush. Hey, Payush. Have you been on this call before, by chance?
Yeah, I'm not on the Discord of Layer5. I am a user of Discord, by the way.
Okay. Well, I guess maybe maybe a more appropriate question is: have you on this call? Have you gotten a chance to introduce yourself and say hi to people?
No, I haven't joined like the community meeting before today. Like I haven't joined this meeting.
Okay, well, good. Well, guess what? In the first 90 seconds of you being on the call, we get to call you out and ask to get to know you a little bit. Do you mind saying hi to everybody and just introducing yourself? So just saying a few words.
Hi, this is Piyush. I am a final year BTech student from India, and I am kind of really passionate about open source these days, and that's why I'm here to contribute to Layer 5 in all the ways I can. I'll be doing code contribution and all type of stuff here. So that's the basic thing I would like to say right now.
Nice. Oh, very good. Well, Piyush, it's good to hear you enunciate your first name because I was gonna go with Pi, but it's more of a P. I
Yes,
think.
Piyush. It's Piyush.
Oh, nice. Very good. Hey, welcome, Piyush. Nice to have you. It's good to. I keep on
Yeah,
looking off
I'm
to the
glad.
right.
I'm glad to be here actually.
You know what? It rarely happens, but first time that you're on the call, you're on the agenda as well. So I think we'll talk about it when we get there. But you're breaking the rules already, so I guess it's gonna be good. Nice. And Adina's with us. Austin is with us. Navendu, Michael. Good. A couple of folks, and Husseina is here. Alonso, Utkarsh. Good deal. There's a couple of folks ended up sending in some regrets, which happens. I'm regretful that both of these individuals are not with us today, in part because one of the first topics that we have about some functionality in Meshry has a lot to do with some work that Bart is doing. So before we get into those topics, it's great to have Piyush. It's also a good time to list down topics if folks have them. Just drop them in if you have any. And then some announcements. So there's outside of Piyush, there's a few others that have joined this week. One individual I'll highlight here. I don't believe that he's necessarily had a chance to engage in chat, but Anirudh Sivaraman is well, I'm hoping that we'll get a chance to interact with him. He's a professor at NYU. I asked him to join because he's his field of study has a lot to do with some of the works that we have going on around service mesh performance, or SMP, which is why is this not on the agenda? This is actually SMP. Let's put SMP on the agenda. We'll talk about it. Talk more about why I invited Anirudh. Okay. Hey, another announcement is Navendu making a real boy. If I can refer to Pinocchio, out of Nivendu, man. Nivendu, made quiet mention of the fact that he's joining forces here. He's bringing all 10 of his digits to bear on the keyboard toward things that we're doing. You may or may not have seen it, in your LinkedIn feed 15 times because only got 5,000 comments on it. But Nivendu is with us. He's here interning, starting off. Congrats, Nivendu. I'm very, very pleased to have you officially aboard.
Yeah, thank you so much. Yeah, I also looking forward to like work more on that. And thanks, guys.
Yeah, it's probably an appropriate time to talk about some of the things that Nivendu, you might have seen Nivendu doing, and some things that he'll you haven't seen him doing yet that you'll probably see him doing. So one is there have been some advancements on Meshri CTL. Anirudh Jain had been focused on Meshri CTL context. That's been a long discussed, concept, much needed. Very pleased to see that work coming through. Nivendu has been, stewarding the final portions of that, along with a number of other, along with Husseina and Anish and Aditi, and there's a list of others, Ayush, and I'm not going to name them all. Anyway, so Meshri CTL continues to need love. It needs people like Husseina and the whole list that I just went through to steward it and be the captains of that CLI. And Nivendu is going to be spending more and more time with us. And so between Nivendu and Vinayak Sharma, who's been working a lot on Get Nighthawk, the two of these individuals, I would hint to you or plant a seed in your minds, all of your collective minds, that these Vinayak Sharma and Nivendu might be on a path toward maintainership, considering the consistency of their engagement, the level of depth of their engagements. We have a number of projects here. We have each of the projects have a number of components. There are so the consideration that I'm sort of informally or sort of ad hoc calling to all of your attention is that with the Nivendu's focus on Meshri CTL, there are no maintainers officially identified for that component. And not only do we need them, only do we need them. So anyway, be paying attention, be watching Nivendu, be silently judging him, be critiquing him and spreading gossip and lies about him behind his back. But yeah, so Vinayak is as well. Vinayak Sharma, most of y'all know him. He's been here a long time. Like most of us, he had been absent for a little while, I think for a couple of months or so, as he'd been focused on university or what have you. He's been here in force on the Get Nighthawk project and on some things on Layer5, the new site. Vinayak is, I would also submit to you to please watch over some of the work that he's doing on Get Nighthawk, and that there are kind of two components within Get Nighthawk, the project site and the CI systems, the rest of the backend systems. That project site, I think he's well positioned for a maintainership role there. So keep your eyes out. We'll plant that thought. Did I just say keep your eyes out? I mean, keep your eyes peeled. Please watch out for. So in other announcements, KubeCon EU and Service MeshCon EU. If anyone had submitted, you're probably getting your confirmations or your rejections, I think, this week. For if anyone wants to speak to those, go ahead. For my part, I forgot to submit to KubeCon EU, but we'll go get some speaking spots anyway. We'll go. So we just won't have as many, which is nice because last time we gave 5 talks and I couldn't keep up. Same thing with Service Mesh Con EU is just, anyway, so that leaves a lot of room for the rest of you to be submitting and be talking. There's a Cloud Native Day WebAssembly coming up. There's also Cloud Native Day, I think they're Cloud Native Days, Cloud Native Day Rust coming up as well. These are small conferences. I think they're good to be joined at KubeCon. WebAssembly and Rust, both things that we're into and using. Pranav Bhat was just asking in the channel about some of that work that he's doing. So anyway, if you have a hankering to give a talk, let me know. I'll help. Okay, that was KubeCon EU. And just any other announcements from folks? Thank you. So we've got a couple topics in and around internship programs for the most part. So implicitly, a moment ago, when we were talking about Navendu interning. Part of his internship is officiated by the Linux by LFX, formerly known as Community Bridge. So we forewent. We participate in it. I don't know that the details are important. Anyway, that we were going to have probably about 4 spots and only opened up 1 for whatever that's worth. We'll open up some others in GSOC and in LFX in the future. We've got a lot going on. Kaleche or Ruth, whose connection I think is horrific. Any comments on SheCode Africa? I know our plan is to participate, and I know Ruth had submitted an application for us too. She's been garnering mentors, volunteering to engage with mentees that would come through the program.
Mm-hmm. Hi everyone.
Hey.
Yeah. Yeah, I think Ruth already submitted an application, and so far we have like 6 persons who have applied to become a mentor for the SheCode Africa bootcamp. So for now, we've not gotten any updates on the application yet. So probably I'll reach out to Ruth and ask her.
Nice.
Yeah.
Okay, good deal. Good deal. That's a strong showing. Six members of this community signed up to mentor. That's nice.
Yeah.
There's probably no question in my mind that we would end up participating. That organization would accept the application. We would engage. So that's exciting.
Definitely, they will accept the application anyways, because they really need organizations to help some of the applicants for the bootcamp, so they should accept it.
I have a personal question on SheCode Africa. Which countries are enrolled? Which countries from Africa?
Okay.
Or does my question make sense?
I think I get you. SheCode Africa is actually an organization that helps female all over in every country, in every African country, Nigeria, Ghana, Kenya, it doesn't matter. It's just basically all African countries. So they connect females to organizations or mentor them and sponsor them to become developers or in any area of their field. Adina, did I answer that correctly? Okay.
And I have a second question to that one. Which country
Okay.
are not included? But I would look on the site. Thank you for
Okay.
posting.
All right. Okay.
I have a personal thing. I want to see if 2 countries are there, but
Two
I
countries.
don't think
No,
yeah.
they do not discriminate. It's basically every African country are included.
Yes.
I don't
They
know.
do not discriminate, but the country itself might discriminate. The thing that's what it was. It's okay.
Okay. Okay. All right.
Thank you.
All right.
And then Google's Summer of Code is coming up as well. Piyush and I were just having a very brief conversation about some potential projects that we would engage in and their description. And so, Piyush, do you happen to have a link to those descriptions handy that you might be able to share?
1 second. Let me share.
Yeah.
I posted in the chat. You can see that.
All right. Cool. All right. So for Google Summer of Code, for things that we might projects that we might do, we ended up tossing 3 ideas out there, 3 things to do. Those 3 things go across 3 different CNCF projects. Envoy, and you know what? Maybe not let me bore. I won't bore everyone by reading through and describing what these things are, but just I'll put the link into the meeting minutes and to start on these projects doesn't mean that we need to wait for Google Summer of Code. And they won't, then the projects won't wait for us because some of these are going to advance irrespective of us. So yeah, take a look at those. We'll put the link right here. These are proposed projects. Okay. Cool. Hey, another topic had been this one's a little more, just explicitly directed toward Meshery and a new feature coming forth in Meshery. One is Nikhil with us? No, Austin is here. Bart had to be gone. One that's called a configuration wizard. So I guess we'll knock out 2 birds with 1 stone on this. It's been evident that, part of the value of Meshery is to help people get up and running quickly. And people can take Meshery and run it in any number of different environments, which means that they can run into any number of pitfalls when they try to run Meshery. They might try to connect it to a bunch of different types of Kubernetes systems, to existing service meshes, to deploy new ones, to existing apps, to just a lot of environments. And so a lot of things can go wrong. We wanted to, therefore, having a configuration wizard in Meshery is warranted and would be helpful to ensure that people have a pleasant experience with the project, that they're able to be successful with the project. So all of you are familiar with installation wizards. Like you download a piece of software and you click next, you install it. Sometimes in the installation wizards, they'll have the easy button or the advanced install. Well, a configuration wizard is a little bit similar to a installation wizard. So let me share a bit of the concept with you all, leave you with these links so that you can express opinion, come to bear, participate. Briefly, you know what, Austin, do you have a link to Bart's prototype? Because that will help everyone.
Let me fetch it.
Okay, thank you. So so a configuration wizard. There's a collection of contributors who are who've been working on this, who met this morning for an hour and a half. They talked about why are we creating one of these? Should we be creating a guided tour? So if you've ever started using a new application and it shows you the interface, but it sort of grays out everything, disables a lot of stuff, and it says, hey, take a look at this, and it teaches you how to use this area of the app, and then you do something and it shows you over here and it walks you through this guided tour. That can be helpful to orienting you as to how to, and training you as to how to use an application. That's good. That's not what this is, but it's related. Maybe we need a guided tour from Esri. It's a related thought, orthogonal to having a configuration wizard. The point of having a configuration wizard is really not to create a bunch of new functionality necessarily. It's to provide a curated experience so that people can be successful initializing their Meshry deployment, so that they start Meshry, the interface comes up, and then what? Like, are they ready to start managing service meshes? Sometimes. We've tried to make some opinionated and intelligent decisions and behaviors in the project to make sure that people can just start. That isn't always the case, though. Sometimes there's disconnects. Sometimes the component isn't communicating. Sometimes the component fell over. They've got to configure their environment a little bit, hence the configuration wizard. Well, users can go configure their environment already. They can go to the settings area, and I'm going to try to bring up settings. If I have Meshry running, and in a detailed fashion, the user can configure their environment, configure their Meshry deployment. So settings. So we're here. They can step through, or they can navigate in any form that they want to ad hoc to these different areas and connect up Prometheus and Grafana, connect up different adapters and Kubernetes and their operator and et cetera, and good. And there's, for as detailed as the configurations can be, this is where all of those details are exposed. This can be discombobulating or disorienting to new users. They don't necessarily know to go to settings, or that they need to make sure that an operator was deployed. They may not know that there was one that was supposed to be. And so hence why we're bringing forth a configuration wizard to say, here's 4 to 5 steps to go through to be successful, to make sure that after you're done with the configuration wizard, you're ready to manage service meshes. Your environment is ready. So the thought is that most people, or everyone today, lands on the system dashboard. They land on this homepage. That there would be probably an additional icon that maybe is this icon or maybe something else that shows them this note. Hey, you may want to walk through the configuration wizard, get started. They go through. We won't walk through all the steps here, but they go through maybe a first step to just make sure that Meshry server can talk to all of its component, all of the adapters. They go through a next step on Kubernetes, connecting to Kubernetes, the operator, the service, deploying in a very simple fashion, in a one-click fashion, deploying a service mesh if they want to. Or if there's an existing mesh of a certain type that we would have, after the operator is deployed, that mesh will have been discovered. Some nominal set of details will be exposed just to confirm to them that it's deployed. So there's a a service mesh step, and then another step on telemetry, specifically metrics, to connect to these systems, or if they're not deployed, to go ahead and deploy them. This is maybe an opportune time for Austin. Do you want to talk about, I know a lot of us spend time with you and others in Figma, and recently you were working on some components and their properties. Do you want to talk about this?
Okay, that's called a variant. We've been working on making Mesh more interactive for everyone who comes into the workspace without having to prototype. So I picked up learning Figma variants, which allows us create interactive components right from our file. The next component we are to make should be the buttons which were discussed today. But so far, the toggle option has been created for when from where someone selects Kubernetes or Prometheus or Grafana or another option, and without having them go to the old prototype page, they can just check out the interaction from the Figma file directly.
Good deal. Okay, good. So if this is of interest to folks, this is the purpose of why we're doing it. Facilitate a short time to value so people can get up and running. And these are the goals. So, good. Comments as we go to another topic.
Can we also add in, I mean, not in the initial phase, but can you also someday add a toggle button in the initial phase? Like you can, if you're having trouble for GKE or EKS, so you can just toggle it on. So internal memory can be a bit smarter, not smarter in the sense that it will automatically detect the environment, but it will ask you, okay, is it GK, is it Google's Kubernetes cluster? And then it can take internally a complete different route to set up different things. So it would be essentially just one click. And now machine knows, okay, it's confirmed, okay, it's Google's Kubernetes cluster, and now I know how to exactly do that, create service accounts and those kind of things, which may differ because it can sometimes differ for different clusters. Not not initially, but maybe some.
Anyone have a comment on that?
So, Utkarsh, are you suggesting that if we submit kubeconfig from EKS or GKE, if it fails, we should give another option to submit another kubeconfig file?
No, not exactly kubeconfig. So if someone is having trouble, maybe they are using DigitalOcean. I mean, not that we are supporting DigitalOcean right now, but if they are, let's say, using DigitalOcean, they are having trouble, they can come to configuration wizard, then they can just click on, they can let Mishri wizard know that this is DigitalOcean. So, and Mishri would internally have some, maybe it could have some different routes, and routes in sense maybe different function invocations, which will which may change if it's DigitalOcean's Kubernetes cluster, or if it's Azure's Kubernetes cluster. So maybe in one Kubernetes cluster you need some service accounts, and another one you may not. And Meshri can smartly do those things just because now the user has confirmed that this is a Kubernetes cluster. Now go and handle it. But which can be sometimes troublesome. So not only the kubeconfig, but the internal setting of things too.
Have not got it completely. Maybe I'll ping you off.
Sure.
Yeah, I think it's a really important comment, something really to it's one of the first snags that people will run into when they try to use Meshry. While there's aspects of Meshry that you can use without Kubernetes, the other half of what Meshry does expects Kubernetes to be there. So it's really important that Kubernetes is able to speak to, Meshry is able to speak to Kubernetes successfully and quickly. The thing is that there's a lot of types of Kubernetes out there. There's a lot of, and so speaking to them, you can speak to them, authenticate, and are authorized to interact with Kubernetes in a bunch of different ways. And to make that simple, is a challenge, and that's in part why. That's what we're trying to do with service mesh, is make them simple. They're a challenge. And so anyway, we've got some challenges to make connecting to and interacting with Kubernetes simple. Yesterday, I was talking to a Docker captain who was looking at OpenMeshry for the first time, trying to use it. And he had Docker Desktop installed and Minikube installed. I think both of the clusters were active on his machine. So the configuration file, the kube config, it had two contexts, one for Docker Desktop, one for Minikube. The Docker Desktop context had the certificate data inside of the kube config file, which is great for Meshry. That's what Meshry looks for to connect and speak to and authenticate to Kubernetes. He didn't have it for, the certificate data is not in the kube config file for his Minikube cluster, which is an issue that everyone runs into. Minikube is a popular way of running a local Kubernetes cluster. And it's also something that to Utkarsh's point, and Husseina, you know this very well, having worked on the Meshry CTL command to generate and gather certificate data for Meshry to be able to speak to Minikube. Well, Meshry server doesn't facilitate that today. So he's sitting there in Meshry server going, why can't I talk to what, I don't know. What is this thing even? Yeah, it doesn't work. He didn't sound like that. He was a pleasant individual. But point is, all of us know what it's like to be, to want to use software that works and is pleasant and delights you. It's delightful when you pull open Meshry and it's just saying all of a sudden you're running Istio and these things are connected and here's your Kubernetes, and it's like, wow, that's delightful. Oops, that's delightful. I didn't have to go through all this setup. So anyway, long story short, Utkarsh, there's to what you're saying, the things that we have for Meshry CTL system config, and where we're able to config these different Kubernetes environments, GKE, EKS, Minikube, and I believe we have AKS as well. I think we have those four.
Yes, yeah.
Whoa, I had to tell him, minimize your browser, go back to the command line, execute this command, and go back and upload the like we had to, it was a process. And I'll let you guys, your minds fill in the rest. It's like, Utkarsh, yes, totally. It's not just the config file and the certificate data that gets in our way, and some of the different specifics between each of these managed Kubernetes services, each of these different Kubernetes platforms, that gets in the way, and things need configured. We're telling people to do it from the command line. Today, we don't warn them of that necessarily. Like we say run Meshry CTL system start, and then after that, they're in the UI, so then they don't necessarily know they need to fix it. Okay, even if they get the certificate data, or even if they get the ability for Meshry to authenticate to Kubernetes, what may also be plaguing their deployment is a lack of network connectivity. So, yep, the Meshry doesn't distinguish between what type of Kubernetes cluster you're connected to, nor does it really let you connect to two Kubernetes clusters simultaneously. So Navendu and Husseina, or at least for Navendu, I was alluding to like a roadmap for Mesh CTL, additional commands to come, and I lost my train of thought. There's patterns, and then there was.
Yeah, it's the pre-setup before starting the mesh tree that we need to do for the, like, to have the Kubernetes context switch before starting up mesh tree.
So we've talked a few different times on the notion that there needs to be a new concept, a new logical construct in Meshry called environment. And that today it's just a word, a text string in the UI, but tomorrow it needs to be the fact that you can create environments and associate one or more Kubernetes clusters and other things to an environment. And that in the UI, like one of the things that was bothering him, this user, was that he would go over to something like this and he'd go like it's. I won't tell you all the things he said. It's just I said it for him, which is this is difficult. He wasn't understanding if this was actually the default namespace in his current cluster, and like but the cluster wasn't shown here, and like what if you wanted to switch clusters? And there's a lot to go around that, and part of that is what Utkarsh was saying. So to wrap up this conversation, Utkarsh and Husseina, and I'd love to see some of the Meshry CTL system config logic be available in Meshry server, so that Meshry server can help people overcome some of these things. And for us to begin to have the concept of an environment as a real concept, for us to be able to hold multiple Kubernetes clusters, or let the user establish connection to multiple Kubernetes clusters, and let the user choose which one they want to interact with at a given time. And identify the type of cluster as well. Is it a mini cube? Is it a such and such? So.
Okay, so what Utkarsh is suggesting is whenever this config wizard comes up, Meshry should be intelligent enough to understand that whether it is EKS, AKS, and based on that, it should be able to give a different wizard, like where we ask for EKS, we ask for region and other things. For GKE, we ask for something else, right? So the wizards should be intelligent enough to change based on the environment we are in, right? If we can detect that.
Yeah, that's right. That's what he was saying. The only reason that I wince a little bit, that's fantastic. We should do that. And the only reason that I have a scowl on my face is because that we should do exactly what you just said, probably first in context of the settings area. Like there's a settings area for sophisticated configuration options and intelligence about what type of cluster you're connecting to and how many, probably from this user interface here, from settings. Exactly what you just said, Husseina. Having that raw capability and having that power, that we would then be able to provide a highly, hopefully a more simple, less sophisticated, curated, guided tour, or not guided, not a tour, but guided, a configuration wizard step in which some users may find that this isn't all that they need, that this is the easy button, but they actually needed additional settings. So they actually needed to break out from here. Like 80% of the users this would work for, they want to connect to one cluster, not 12. And they're trying to connect to a mini cube, not a I don't know, some weird Kubernetes distro or something like, you know, the status quo stuff, the easy button, the 80% stuff, and that there would be always a link to the, you know, where you can go to really do the sophisticated config. But that, yeah, the configuration wizard itself, it probably isn't building in a bunch of new functionality. It's just, it's leveraging existing functionality and providing that guided experience in which when like Husseina, as you were engaging with a user recently, one of the attendees at the IstioCon workshop, they were saying, hey, I'm having trouble connecting to Kubernetes. Actually, it's this very same thing. And as you're engaging with them and troubleshooting and you're asking for logs and doing, you know, doing a fantastic thing, that ideally in the future, I think there's two things that I would hope that you and anyone else would be able to ask someone, that I would hope that you would be able to say, hey, are all 4 of the steps in your configuration wizard green? Or like, can you run through the configuration wizard for me and then ping me? Like that answers, you know, most of the time that takes care of people. It's just like, go through the second tool that in the future that I would hope that the project has is a diagnostics reporting tool. Like, hey, I think that there probably is a bug in your environment. Can you go ahead and click on the diagnostics reporting tool that grabs the logs, ships them off, you know, generates a GitHub issue, and you know, that's a whole separate can of worms. I just.
Yeah.
So here's the link to the configuration wizard. And I can only be very encouraging of both Utkarsh and Husseina and whomever else to write some things down, to begin, put some thoughts on paper about probably 2 things. One, the logic that we have in Mesh3 CTL, how can we make some of that available to Mesh3 server so that once people are in the UI, they don't necessarily have to exit the UI. So Husseina, I'm eyeballing you really hard right now. And then the second thing is Utkarsh, with respect to multi-cluster and type of cluster, basically an environment construct, giving you a hard stare right now. Any final comments on? Okay. It's actually not easy designing a stinking configuration wizard because it's a lot of, but I think that it'll be worth it. Hey, a number of you are involved in, and if you're not involved in, then go ahead and get involved in Get Nighthawk. It's not a large project, but it is a project, and it is something that a number of you are giving time to, and it's totally worth it. And so the project gets its own logo. So there's a collection of logos out here for people to express opinion on. And so, you know, please do. Get out and vote. Okay. Anyone want to provide verbal feedback on the logos? Oh, good. Get Nighthawk number 4.
What's the difference between the 4 and the 6?
I think it had to deal with the angle of the wings, or the angle of the.
Okay. Now I see it. Yeah, I see it now.
The other, it's pretty difficult to see as well, but the other slight change is the width. These are a little bit skinnier, these green ones here, than these green ones here. So like it's just a small variation. But for what it's worth, I think, so we're soliciting feedback on the CNCF Service Mesh Working Group list as well. If you're not on the CNCF Service Mesh Working Group list, you're more than welcome to subscribe to that mailing list. But the reason I bring it up is because I don't know that anyone has, I don't know that I've seen a vote for number 5 yet. So that helps, like, eliminate some. 2 other topics we can talk about today. One is just one is that sometime last week, this particular book that we've talked about a few times went into early release. It's the Service Mesh Patterns book, and it is it only has a few chapters done. It has so much more work to do than is done. I'm bringing it up because there were 2 chapters. I haven't looked at it yet. I think there's just 2 chapters that are in here. So one is called How to Get Started with Any Service Mesh. And I don't know if anyone has seen this before. Like, I don't know if any of this looks familiar, but the whole darn thing is about meshery. And there are meshery CTL commands that I sure as heck didn't create, but a number of you did. There's an experimental command, or a command in the experimental phase that I really hope comes out of experimental phase before the book publishes. And so every which way that we can, I think, your work is being represented. So actually, I just noticed something that leads us into our next topic. So kudos to all you, seriously. This is available and out there. If you've got a subscription to the O'Reilly platform, tell your, go grab it. I had said that I would make sure that you all get access. So come see me if. But in here, I was just noticing that it talks about service mesh performance. That's actually our next topic. Something to maybe end on. So a couple of bright individuals at Intel had been spending some time looking at SMP at this project, and are, near as I can tell, ecstatic and really excited about what we're doing, what's been done, and they want to come in and help. Thank goodness. And as part of them being able to help, it's time to donate this to the CNCF as a sandbox project. And so there's a Google Doc that has a draft of what that submission looks like. It's actually fairly short. It doesn't take a lot. I don't think that there's a link to it in here. I'll share the link. I mean, I've shared it in the other mailing list. And does anyone have questions on what that means for the project? Or what it is that Intel is going to do, or like what are the next steps for the project, or just what the heck is SMP?
So until now, you handle it in the Mesh-free Layer 5 group. What does it mean if it's gonna change and be a sandbox project? Gonna have some sponsorship from CNCF or some other companies, probably other companies that can get involved, which can bring, I don't know, resources, probably, or people or money, or people or something. Yeah, I'm curious what that it means. Yeah.
Yeah, and why do each of the things that you just said are benefits of donating the project to the CNCF. The donation is the intellectual property being the rights to that intellectual property being transitioned to the Linux Foundation, and to the subgroup of the Linux Foundation, the Cloud Native Computing Foundation, the CNCF, which mechanically, much actually doesn't change. Like mechanically, those of you who are involved or want to get involved, you do so in much the same way, or the stewards of the project continue to be there, and the direction of it continues to be the same, or like the act of donating is a pretty small transaction, I guess. It's not disruptive to the project or its heading or its bearing. The CNCF doesn't say what you're supposed to do with it, and now you've got to change and do things differently like that. Not really like the same. We already use their code of conduct with the meetings that we would host. It just uplifts the project. What it does, the reason that we donate is one, to help to help achieve the mission of this project, is to help set a standard, a uniform way in which you can measure the performance of your apps and your cloud native infrastructure. And Intel and other companies in general feel that they have, large legal teams that in a broad swath will say, well, hey, if the project is in this foundation, then we're good with that. And then you're free and clear to go engage heavily. Is one of the reasons that it helps to get the project over there. The second reason is because the CNCF, what is it at its core? It's a world-class marketing machine. It's kind of that's not why it was created necessarily, but that's a heavy emphasis of what a lot of the staff does. So that's great for the project. It makes it comfortable for other companies to come and engage. It is to those companies and to the layman or to the user. Often the CNCF carries a stamp of, or a project being in the CNCF that carries that elevates it in their mind, carries a stamp of like, that's the right project to choose and use. It'll be around for a while, and it carries a certain set of connotations with it, which is positive. Yep, that means that the project itself would end up getting some amount of consideration at KubeCons or the occasional webinar or what have you. The CNCF itself has 3 different levels of projects in terms of the maturity of the projects. So that goes from sandbox, incubating, graduated. SMP would go in at a sandbox level. Meshry is a project that essentially it hits all the requirements for incubating level. But starting off with SMP to go in at sandbox. The mechanics by which we have the meetings and things, actually, the project would get there's some additional support that can happen. Like the project can participate under the CNCF's umbrella for Linux Foundation and Google Summer of Code a bit more directly. And we already do a lot of that today, but more directly. Hey, there'll be a staff and other assistants to like for Zooms or like for Google Docs, and a lot of the stuff that we're already providing and already doing is the same, would all be the same. But if we need additional resources as a project, if we want to have them more directly reinforce some tweets that have been sent, or like there's just a bunch of resources to the projects themselves. Maybe if you want to ask for help with documentation, there's a lot of internal vying for resources, and there's a lot of projects. But yeah, so some of what we're going to do with the CNCF is go use their servers and their labs to go run a bunch of performance tests. Well, if one of their projects is asking for it, that project gets priority over others. And so, yeah, it officiates it. I'm sorry. The other thing that it does is the CNCF is a vendor neutral home to the extent that us humans can be unbiased and, believe in free and open things that don't have, political agendas behind them. I would say that something like the Linux Foundation gets as close to that as possible. And so having SMP in there is important because it's not opinionated about why this mesh is faster than the other one, because you can use the spec to do that comparison. And if that spec is coming from a vendor, it's less believable. In our case, from a Layer5's perspective, we're not a vendor of a service mesh, so we don't have a dog in the fight in terms of which one is faster or slower. but even still, having it in a third-party, well-known organization, you don't have to, people don't have to, shouldn't have to question it. It's just assumed. So those are, that's why. Or for some projects, they go over, they don't have a logo, they don't have a, so many other projects are way less, or not nearly as far along as S&P. But yeah. And they go in and so they'll benefit from some additional resources like people designing a logo for it or what have you. But what else? Yeah. All right. We still have the .5 release to get out on Meshry. We're oh so close. There have been some changes, some fixes going on in Mesh Sync and the Meshry operator. Those are what's holding up the release. Otherwise, Michael and Asuko, most notably, have been working on writing up release announcements and kind of feature blogs about really describing things that have been done in the release. Those are wonderful. If anybody else wants to do it, there's a doc that calls out what needs to be written up. The link to it is in the community meeting minutes.
Like, sorry, I want to ask, like, what exactly can we write about?
Yeah. So one of those is something like in Meshry CTL, the command line client, it has some new commands that weren't there in the .4 release. So there's new commands that are here now. And something is so just like there's like a few of them, actually just taking one and writing a blog post that says, hey, there's this command, this is how it behaves, this is kind of why it was written up, this is a cool way to use it, I enjoy doing it like this, or it doesn't have to be, it can just be
right. I see.
Yeah, purely from a user's perspective. That's an example. Another one is another, like as part of the release, there's a new adapter for one of the service meshes for traffic mesh was created and will be released under just talking about what traffic mesh is and why we added another adapter. And
that's fine.
Yeah. There's blog posts needed for the service mesh performance project as well. Or like there's, yeah, I encourage all of you to write some stuff because it'll actually, it helps all of your careers and be able to reference and build out work that you've done, just like open source code does, and you can point to it. So do blog posts. And there are other blog posts. Trying to think to be written, something like, why are we participating in She Code Africa and what does it mean to us? And how many people, how many mentors and like there's a pre-story to it, there's a post-story to it. So yeah, anyway, all of those are welcoming. Okay, anybody have anything else?
It's a little bit late already. I went yesterday in a call. I don't know from where was the link or whatever. Telepresence. I don't know if you heard about it.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, so I found the idea interesting, not necessarily new. The thing that, let's say, you have the apps deployed in the Kubernetes cluster. You are writing your code, and then you want actually to have the Docker image build, let's say maybe locally, maybe not, whatever. But the thing is that you actually intercept the traffic. I mean, not intercept the traffic. In between, he could put his code in. I think it's also sort of possible with Meshri, but not sure if it's serving this thing, because the thing that he was having was on over Envoy. Envoy. So it did had the, let's say, a sort of a service mesh deployed there. And yeah, it was interesting. So let's say the demo or the configuration and things like that, it's not at the level of Meshri. So it's, let's say, Meshri has much more things, but it was still a good, interesting demo. But I was like, I stopped for the moment because it was asking me directly to connect to all the GitHub account. Otherwise, I could not start it. But they said it's gonna be free and so on. The interesting part that it is, so maybe not in Meshri. Sorry for not getting to the beginning. So there are 2 points. One was, I think it's also possible on us, but it's not important. And the second one is, it is a cool thing that he did with the Go language, in the Golang, and this thing we can use. Like, let's say we have somewhere our sandbox deployment, and you as a developer, you're writing your thing, and then you want to use it. So that was an idea. I don't know if it makes sense now, but just raising up that.
Yeah, those are, yeah, you're totally right to associate those two things. And one way of characterizing, I think maybe the second thing you were talking about is distributed debugging. So you're running an application on the service mesh, and you're wondering, what's going on with your app. You'd like to maybe you'd like to have remote debugging going on, like attach a remote debugger over there and have that facilitated through your app. Yeah, that's pretty. It's pretty cool. The other thing is sort of on the forefront of, like, you're actively developing and coding something, and you need to deploy so that you can test. So kind of build, deploy, test. Super fast.
But you don't deploy all the things. You only your thing. But it is like, when it is presenting everything, it's like dreaming.
Was all that available in Telepresence itself?
Or
were there other projects?
I can give you the link of the presentation.
Yeah. Okay. The reason in part, like, there's a prominent competitor of ours that has some of that. So I don't know I wonder if they were involved. So while you're doing that, Alonso was asking about the materials and the form for collaborators and contributors. Is there materials about diagnostics or identifying scenarios about scaling a service mesh? So Alonso, are you thinking in docs.meshry.io? Or are you thinking in articles on layer5.io? Or in general, like, and actually it's kind of appropriate to both. There's we need more. We need a ton more. There's so much to talk about there. Tons of things to put onto layer5.io about how service meshes work and how people can use them in different ways. They can use them, all, like, so many examples. There's also walkthroughs. So to I think in part to what Kaleche might have been asking about is that. So this Docker captain, this user that I was talking to yesterday, he's like, okay, well, I've got Meshri. Okay, my Meshri is connected and it's running now. Okay, we're good. We worked past my issues. All right, so what am I supposed to do now? And again, like, like, it kind of hit me. Or it's a good example of, like, oh geez, I guess some scenarios would be helpful to people, like some what do you want to do? Like, here's some common tasks. Do you want to walk through those? So Alonso, we should build out some common tasks in Meshry. Did you want to deploy an application? Here's where you go to do that. But before we even get, that's kind of a lot. Before we even get to that, there are interactive labs, Katacoda labs that have been written for people to walk through, to familiarize with Meshry, to familiarize with the service meshes and do certain tasks in just a temporary learning environment. Shriti Chandra had started those. I got recent feedback that some of them have some bugs, and she'd only been able to take them so far. So if anyone has an interest in advancing the interactive labs for Katacoda, there's a repository on GitHub. It's not that difficult to make these interactive labs. There's a repository that we could use help with in creating those. Those are actually embedded in the Meshry docs, and they're also embedded on Layer5.io, Layer5.io/learn. But the repository is called Service Mesh Labs. Okay. We are well over time. Let's call it that. Thank you all for coming. Good to chat. Catch you soon. Yeah. Okay. Thanks, Alonso.
Bye, everyone.
Okay. Bye, guys.
Thank you.
Bye-bye. Thank you.
Yes.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.